Radiomaster TX12. Here it is, guys. Let's go ahead and jump into a full review of this micro-sized, fully supported OpenTX radio. This is not just a fly-by-night piggyback firmware on this guy. This is actually supported by OpenTX and has its actual own firmware on here. So pretty cool for the price. And if price is in your mind and you want to get into this hobby as cheap as possible, this is a great way. It is not a full-size radio. It is a tiny version of the TX16, sort of the TX16 little brother, if you will. It does not have a full-color screen or any super fancy things on here, but it's kind of like a shrunk-down version of the TX16, which is awesome without all the bling, but it doesn't feel as small in my hands as the X Lite series from FR Sky. So I reviewed the X Lite a while back last year on my channel, and I felt like this is a better format. This is kind of like the newer version of something like the Jumper that we reviewed on the channel last year as well. We are on into late 2020 now. We have a 1-in-1 protocol on this one. It is not a 4-in-1. It's not going to have all of the different protocols that this guy has. The 4-in-1 module is loaded with different protocols, but I will show you what's on here, and most of it you can get. So if you're a Spectrum guy, you're kind of left out. There is no Spectrum protocol on there, but it does have a full-size JR module bay in the back, so that means that you can add an orange receiver back there, an orange module, and bind up any of your Spectrum stuff. So it will also do crossfire, and it's around the $60 mark. So I'll put the price down below for the link for the TX12, and you guys can check it out. But let's just go ahead and put this guy on the bench. Let me give you a quick overview of the TX12, because I know a lot of you guys are thinking about this radio in comparison to the TX16. You can get the non-blinged out version of this one for a little bit cheaper, by the way. So if you don't need leather side panels and fancy anodized aluminum bling on there, there is a cheaper version of this one as well. I think this is around the $135 price, and this one's around the $200 price point, and then this one's around the $60 price point. So many options this year. Let's go ahead and show you that TX12. Pretty cool little deal, and it feels really good in my hands. So I'm happy with this one. Let's check it out. Now, one of the first things you need to know about selecting a radio if you're going to get into FPV is that not all radios are created equally. So this radio is not a full-blown version of that beautiful TX16 series. The TX16S is my go-to radio right now. There are some forums and some talk out there that that particular radio has some certain issues. I'm here to tell you that every single radio in the history of the RC hobby has had some type of issues. So take that with a grain of salt. Now, if there's a dire issue out there that you know about, put it down in the comments below. If you know of something that's like a complete big problem with the T16 series, let me and other people know about that. I would love to know, and any information that you have about your experiences with your T16S would be great on the channel and beneficial to other people here on the channel. So today it's all about a budget version, and I'll put this up on the screen right here so you can see it. The T12 is coming in at $69, not $59. So it is available at Banggood, and it doesn't have a whole bunch of different versions of it that you can get. It is a 1-in-1 protocol, and it is using the same type of chip system as what's on the TX16. So I'm interested to see how this one tests out. If you're looking for a smaller format, this is great because it will be able to accept the JR module bay in the back, and it's a little bit better and more compact for travel. So and just probably one of the best options out there right now for budget radio without feeling like it's a cheap piece of crap. So let's go ahead and take a look at the box now for the TX12, and let me show you just some brief overview about this radio and some great information that might be beneficial to you, especially if you're just getting into the hobby or you want to know about the TX12. Now, this is the box that you get. It is Radiomaster TX12, little graphic on the front, and on the back is where we have some information on the basics about this radio, the internal protocols. The internal and external RF systems are on 2.4. If you want to run something like Crossfire, you can also do that with this radio running 900 megahertz. It is around 363 grams in the weight. It is standard frequency on 2.4, which is what everybody runs in the hobby primarily. The RF chip is a single multi-protocol CC2500 chip, and again, that is the same type of system and chip that is in the larger radio. So that's good news for you guys. It only supports a handful of different protocols, and Corona, High-Tech, Futaba, which is SFHSS, and FR Sky D16 and D8. So it will bind to the super tiny whoops that have those SPI type of receivers built into the flight controller, or it'll do a standalone D16 like an XM Plus or RXSR receiver. It also binds up to Radio Link and Graupner, which I've never flown Graupner receivers, but I know Radio Link is good to about a mile out, and it's a fairly cheap receiver to get. So the most popular obviously are going to be the FR Sky receivers, and probably Crossfire if you guys are using that yet. But the transmitting power on this is 20 dBm. The antenna gain is 2 dB, which is pretty good. The voltage range on here is pretty decent, from 6.6 to 8.4 volt, and basically you're going to stick to a 2S battery, 18650 or a LiPo. It does come with an 18650 tray, which is great. Two 18650s in there, and it has OpenTX firmware, which is supported, which I love. So up to 16 channels, and I believe you can upgrade that later if you want to, as well as a 128 by 64 LCD display. So again, it's not full color, but it does have what they say are high precision pentometer gimbals on there, and we also have external module bay support and USB and SD card OpenTX companion PC software that can hook up to this radio. So you can also use it as a simulator, which is really awesome. So if you're looking to get into FPV this winter and you have plenty of time, you can plug this straight into your computer and use it as your own simulator transmitter for just about any type of FPV simulation software out there. It does have a little kickstand in the back, and they made it foldable like the other Radiomaster radios. Flip that up and you get access to the module bay. This is where you can put your full-blown Crossfire in back there, your module, or a Spectrum module if you want to run Spectrum receivers. I wish it had Spectrum in there for you Spectrum guys. And if you want to get into this radio and play around with the stick, how tight these sticks are, you can do that by taking the back of it off and loosening up the springs inside. It does have a limited amount of switches on here, but I find that a lot of times I don't use more than 4 switches for most of my FPV setups. So I usually have an arm switch here. I have a 3-position switch here for my flight modes, which is usually going to be starting out with the stability mode and then like straight into acro. Over here, I usually put my beeper, and then I do my recovery mode right here, which would be either GPS recovery mode, or sometimes I do turtle mode on this one as well. Sometimes I will combine a turtle mode or a beeper or a return to home on a single switch, which is nice because you have a 3-position here. You got a momentary switch right over here, which is S2, momentary switch S1 over here. You've got sort of gimbal style switches on the side, which I don't use these hardly ever. I don't think I've ever used those actually. We have throttle here, yaw, pitch, and roll axis on that side. So if we press on this center power button right here, it takes us into OpenTX Companion. And it's so cool that they have the firmware for this, because some of these companies, and I talk about fly-by-night companies, they come out with a radio and they kind of hijack the OpenTX firmware to work on their radio, and they don't actually pay OpenTX to make the firmware for that specific radio hardware. So it seems like Radiomaster is definitely paying to have their firmware. Maybe OpenTX did it out of the kindness of their heart, but it really helps out the community when you have a solid firmware available specifically for the hardware in that radio. So that's really great. So you have a momentary timeout on the LCD display, but if you touch that touch wheel again, it comes back on. It shows me the radio battery level. We've got trim sliders here. They're all zeroed out because usually in a quad setup, you don't change your trims. You leave them all centered. Some guys will tell me, oh man, my quad's drifting to the left or the right. Well, don't worry about it because we never touch these flying quadcopters. We have a return button. We have page. We have a telemetry button here. We have the roller, which feels really good. We have model menu and system menu here. So we can press on the system menu and we can get into the system here. We can go back, press that once, it'll take me in, and I can page over here. Let's see if I go back in, SD card, radio setup, and now we can scroll down to the bottom. We're set up in the standard AETR, which is aileron, elevator, throttle, rudder. And you can change that if you want to TAER, which is sometimes what Crossfire is set up to be. And man, that timeout's really fast. That's one thing I'd like to change. If I could find that in here. You can also change up and down the sound as well if you don't like the beeps being so noisy. And we can turn off backlight mode if you want to as well. And then let's go ahead and check out, let's go ahead and turn down the volume here. While I'm here, I was going to go ahead and show you guys the firmware, and that's a little better there. I'll stick it right about there. So I'll go back and now I'll page over again. Let's go at global functions, the trainer setup. If you just choose to use this as a trainer, this would be a great radio to train somebody with. We have hardware calibration for your sticks, your pots, your switches, and we have the firmware version here, which is OpenTX 12 for the Radiomaster OpenTX 12, which is TX12, which is great. That timeout's super fast. We have version 2.3.11, and specifically for Radiomaster, that's great, and it's 1027, so that's really recent. We have firmware options as well for Crossfire Ghost, International Multi-Module, and Lua scripting as well. You won't be able to use Lua scripting until you put your SD card in the bottom here. And the SD card slot goes down in the very bottom. You'll put your SD card right there. And then there's your 2S plug in case you're using a LiPo. And you can put a pretty big LiPo in here. The bay is actually pretty big. It's wider than the 18650 battery, which is really awesome. The only thing about this, I think, is putting this back in there with the wire kind of like super tight. It's a little bit tight to get it back in there and then be able to get the wire in there without pinching the wire. So it's really close right there. You want to just be double checking that you're not pinching it because it could separate. But what's cool about this is that in the model menus, you can put as many models on an OpenTX radio as you'd like with the SD card expansion. So we're starting out with a limited amount of memory here probably, but they already have a few models on here. So if you long press this, it will show you the about. You can reset it to the factory if you want, but press model and it'll show you the models that are already on this radio. So you already have a quad on here, and I've flown this radio already, so I used the quad, which is really nice. So all your switches are active in that setup. So if we long press there, you can back up, copy, or move. And if you want to select a different model, you can press and hold, and you can select, back up, copy, move, or delete this model. So I'm going to select that model for you, and then we'll go and select quad again. And now if I go return back to the main menu, it goes back to quad. So if I want to edit things, you press on model, which is here. Now we can page over. Now, normally with the other radio, you can press model and it would take you into that. But this one is kind of like the QX7 where you had to page over. So I'll do that one more time again. So we're going to press quad, we're going to press model, then we're going to press page over. So now that takes me into the model setup. And if you're trying to bind up a new quad, you just go down to the very bottom. Did you see what I just did? I went from the top down to the very bottom. So you can do that. You can kind of press to the left and it'll bring you to the bottom of the menu. And now I can change D8 or D16 here, which is cool. So AETR is my setup for that model. And you can change it depending on which model you're flying. So when you want to bind up an XM Plus, you click that, telemetry on 1 through 8. And now it's searching for my XM Plus. And then I turn on the quad, holding down the button on the XM Plus, and this will bind up almost instantly, which is super cool. So it only gives you about 3 beeps and then it turns off. Now we can go back into the model menu again, press that model button, and then page over. And it works by the one you're selected on. So we page over again, it gives you heli setup. We got flight modes, and there's our switches, SE, SB, and SC. And I believe they have one more on there. Nope, they only have 3. So to add another switch, let's just give you an example of that. Right now it's set to S or CYC1. You just click on that and then put whatever switch you want on there, even that momentary button, SD, C, SC, and it'll automatically switch. Now you can also do it manually where you click on it and you just go like this. So you can manually choose it as well. But the easy way is just to flip the switch and it will change to that switch. So I probably have doubled up there. I believe SC was on another one, but that's okay. So we're gonna go to the next page, and that's your mixes, your outputs, your curves, logical switches. And the last few pages you really don't use a lot. Some of this stuff, unless you're using Lua scripting, you go all the way to the end for the Lua scripting. But that is pretty much in a nutshell the system. It's very basic, and if you ever need help on setting up a quad, there are a lot of videos out there for the very basic quad setup, and I'll try to do that for you guys coming up on the channel, because I know some of you guys have been asking about basic quad setup and binding, and I do have a great beta flight video as well. But also there is a blanking plate which comes along with this radio. It's in this little pack right here. So if you're using your external module, what you do is you go into your radio, if you plug in Crossfire back here, your module, and you have your antenna coming off there, you don't have a use for this one, but don't have your radio on without your external module plugged in and external selected inside the menu. Without having this on there, you can fry the radio. So be very careful and make sure that if you're running 2.4, you always have this plugged in. When you're not, you can use this blanking plate and put it in there if you're using Crossfire. But to get into that model menu again, press the model menu, and then you're going to page over, and we're going to go down to the bottom again like we did for the D16 setup, and we're going to turn the multi-protocol off for external. So we're going to turn that off, and then you're going to page down to external, and we can select a few different things here: PPM, XJT, DSM2 for spectrum, and Crossfire there. CRSF is for Crossfire. And you're going to do all your binding from your Crossfire module. If you're using the full-blown version, which I have, it has a little joystick on the back, and you can start a bind process, and it will automatically update Crossfire receivers, which I love. Now I'm going to turn that off because most of the time I'm using the multi-protocol spectrum. So we're going to go down, go back to off there, and now it's using this antenna. So again, if you're using the Crossfire antenna, it does not use this, so it moves over to the back, and you can take this off and put this plug in there. But otherwise, leave your regular antenna on there. So I'm going to go ahead and turn our internal RF back on to multi, and you only get 2 choices there. You get multi or off. So we're going to go back to multi. Once I have multi on, I can change from different types of protocols, and the protocols are right here. So we have FlySky right there, and 1 through 16, receiver bind down at the very bottom. But I'm going to go ahead and show you what protocols are in here: Corona, FrSky RX, FrSky Main, FrSky X2, FrSky L, High Tech, Hot, which is that Graupner, Radio Link, Red Pine, that wasn't listed, SFHSS, Skyarte, is that how you say that? Skyarte, So not a ton of different protocols in here, but it does have the most popular on there, which is this one, FR Sky. So D16, you can go down to change it. Again, if you're doing SPI, binding up V8 to D8 there for SPI receivers. But most of you guys are using D16, so we'll stick it on D16, and once it's there, I can go out and go ahead and bind up to most of my race quads at the D16 protocol. And again, for guys that want to do simulation, FPV simulator on a computer, this is the USB port right here, and you get one in the box, which is cool. This just plugs into that and then plugs into your computer. So it's kind of cool that it's at the very top, because most of the time you're holding your transmitter like this. It's not coming out the bottom and back around. So plug this in into your computer, install your software and your drivers, and you should be good to go this winter for learning FPV. Hopefully by spring you're good enough on the simulator. Usually it takes a week or two on the simulator before you're really good at your stick orientation. When you go out to fly for the first time in real life at your field, it'll be a lot easier if you do simulation first. That really helps a lot for new pilots. I did it when I was learning how to fly helis for about 30 days before I actually flew a heli. But FPV race quads are a lot easier to fly than helis, and a lot less expensive. And I wanted to give you guys some solid size comparison here so you get a good idea of how big the TX12 is next to the TX16. They are a lot different. So this one is quite a bit thinner. It does not have rubber side grips like the TX16S has, sort of a grip on the side and a rubber grip in the back. I think that the TX16S blinged out series is a little nicer with these sort of leather side panels, but then again, this is a $200 radio versus something that's around $70, $69 is a pretty good price for just getting into the hobby. If you're not the kind of person that needs all the bling, don't worry about that. Just get the regular version. This one's, again, I think around $135 or something on sale right now. So the full-size radio does feel good in your hands. This has Hall gimbals on here, which are aluminum style gimbals. These are not the Hall gimbals on this TX12, but they get the job done and they don't feel super small. My biggest problem with the X-Lite series was that they felt too little and tiny on my fingers. And these are they look to be a tiny bit smaller maybe, but they're not small enough so that they feel dinky. So it feels good in your hands, and I actually kind of prefer this little smaller format. It feels nice. This one is going to be harder to transport, obviously. This one is requiring much larger case, and that's the other thing about the TX12 is it doesn't come out of the case, so hopefully they come out with a nice little case for the TX12 coming up. And then the next radio over that a lot of guys are buying right now is the TBS Tango 2, and even smaller than the TX12, which is kind of amazing. And this guy will get you out there for 5 miles plus. It will go way out there. These receivers are a little more expensive than like Radio Link and FR Sky receivers, but they also have the popular Nano series receivers, which are a really good price. And then this is the full-blown TBS module, which does fit in the back of this. Probably have to take it off, the antenna off to get it on there, but it does fit in the JR module bay. And this one is the one with that joystick on there for going straight into the bind menu, which is nice. It also shows the longitude and latitude on there for the last known source of your model if you ever have a fail-safe, which is really good. But I don't fail-safe hardly ever with Crossfire. So when it links up, you'll see a green light on there, and these are super easy to work with. Just set it up on the external module bay instead of having internal, and you're just about good to go with your Crossfire. Pretty easy to set up in Betaflight too. So lots of options out there, guys. And just as a bonus in this video, I wanted to show you my X10S. This guy is even bigger than my TX16S, and it weighs a lot more than the TX12. I mean, it is a beast. And this radio has been through hell. It's been everywhere, all over the state of Oregon, Washington, West Coast. I had to saw the back of it off to get my battery in and out of there because they had a no battery bay to be able to open up, so I had to Dremel the back of it. So I would love to see if they came out with a new version of this, maybe a little more compact and beastie, but no 4-in-1 module support on that. So that's why the jumper and the Radiomasters are so seriously popular with everybody. So multi-protocol is what everybody wants these days, and Taranis radio, yeah, it's great, but they leave it up to you to put whatever module in the back of the Taranis radios you want. But these are super popular now, and hopefully this video taught you something or showed you something that you didn't know about all of these radios. I'm Justin Davis, guys. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Please do subscribe for more awesome RC video and information and reviews right here on the channel. Take care, guys, and be safe.